You might have felt this way before. Life seems to whisper to you that one day things will calm down, and yet, year after year, nothing actually feels less chaotic. People are still hard to read. Work still has those days that repeat themselves until you are so tired you barely know what you are living for. Old stories, unanswered messages, words you wish you could take back. They all keep trailing behind you, quietly, like an underground river flowing beneath everything you do in the daylight. You try to grow up. You try to be the understanding one. But sometimes, even when you already understand, there is still this empty space inside, not knowing what to do with all this mess. If tonight you are lying there, staring at the ceiling or watching the light on the wall, and you find yourself wondering, when will life finally get less complicated? Then this video was made exactly for that moment. There is something Marcus Aurelius understood very early, something most of us take a long, winding road to even touch. Life never promised to be less chaotic. But if you change the way you look at it, everything, people, pain, failure, even the small, boring tasks can become a training ground for your character, for your inner strength, and for your own peace. Marcus did not live in peaceful times. He was an emperor in the middle of war, plague, betrayal, and loss. Every night, when everything finally quieted down, he would sit alone and write. He wrote so he would not lose his mind in the middle of the storm. He wrote to remind himself that what happens on the outside does not have to turn into a storm on the inside. He did not try to escape the waves. He learned to become the rock that the waves crash against, not trying to be remembered, only trying to live rightly. Tonight, we will use the story of Marcus and the reflections of other Stoic philosophers as a small candle in a dark room to shine a softer light on your own life, the people who irritate you, the setbacks that seem to wreck every plan, the relationships that have already ended, the repetitive work that makes you wonder, what is left for me here? Not to judge you, not to tell you that you have to be stronger, but to gently try another angle with you. Maybe the things you hate the most are quietly training you the most. Welcome to Lucid Dream, Sleep, and Science Stories, a place where stories about philosophy, psychology, and sleep are told at a slower, warmer pace so you can listen, breathe, and gently close the door on a long day. Here, we do not need dramatic reinventions. We do not need to change our whole life in a single night. We only need to do the next right thing, and every time we get lost, come back to that right thing. One more time, tonight, through this voice. I will walk with you through 3 very small, but very large things. Seeing people as a gym for your character. Letting adversity not only knock you down, but also reshape you, and living a quiet, decent life. Even if no one applauds, while you, deep down, know who you are slowly becoming. You do not have to force yourself to pay close attention. Just lie down. Adjust your pillow so it feels a little softer. Let your shoulders drop and allow your breathing to slow. If scattered thoughts start rushing in, that is okay. Let them sit there like a few extra guests in the room. The rest, let tonight's story take care of when you are ready. We will begin with a simple truth. People are not obstacles on your path. They are the path. Maybe today, before you lay down to listen to this video, you already felt exhausted, not because of work, but because of people. A message that was seen but never answered. A coworker's joke that went too far. Someone close to you who always talks about their own stories, but never once asks, "How have you been?" Each of those things, on its own, sounds small. But when they stack up, a very specific kind of tiredness shows up inside you, tired of having to put up with other people. And it is very easy to think, if only I did not have to deal with these people, life would feel so much lighter. Marcus Aurelius reached a very different realization. He wrote a line so short, yet powerful enough to flip the whole perspective. People are your proper occupation, he did not say. War is the work of an emperor, or politics is the work of an emperor, he reminded himself every day that what he was really doing was not ruling an empire, but learning how to face people, one person at a time, without losing his own nature. If you see it that way, the people who annoy you suddenly change their names. They are no longer obstacles on the road to a peaceful life. They are the road itself. Try looking back at one very ordinary day of yours. In the morning, you go to work or to school. On the way, a bike or a car cuts you off and forces you to brake hard. Your chest tightens. A curse is already sitting on the tip of your tongue. That is the first exercise of the day, a lesson in patience. If you react like you always do, lean on the horn, growl, curse in your head or out loud, that encounter will pass like every other. But if tonight you sit here with me and look at that same moment again and ask a different question right now, do I really have to trade my peace for one reckless driver? You will not get it right every time, but each time you try, you are quietly building a new muscle in your inner world. Like the first time you step into a gym, lifting a weight so light that you almost feel weak. But it is exactly those small repetitions that slowly change your body for real. In that moment, when you choose to take one deep breath, watch them speed off and say quietly in your mind, "Fine, let them go ahead of me a little. I'll keep my peace for myself." You are not letting them win. You are letting yourself win just a little over your own impulse. By noon, it might be a different story. That one colleague who always interrupts, grabs the idea, or casually dismisses what you say with a line like, "Yeah, I already knew that." What you feel then is not just irritation. It is like being shrunk down, as if your voice is not big enough to exist in that room. Here, the exercise is no longer just about patience. It touches discipline and self-respect. Discipline, so you do not fall into petty arguments just to feed your ego. Self-respect, so you do not stay so silent that you erase yourself from the conversation sometimes. Your training ground is a single, calm sentence. Let me finish my point, if that's okay. Short, gentle, not a declaration of war, but your way of telling the world, "I'm here too." Every time you dare to say something like that, not to win, but to honor yourself, you are casting one more vote for the kind of person you want to become. Someone who knows they matter, who does not need to shout, but also does not quietly disappear. By late afternoon, it might be another situation. Someone who used to be very close, an ex, for example, suddenly shows up in your mind, or on your screen, a memory, a song, an old message, or simply their name appearing somewhere. Emotions rise, resentment, regret, anger, or a small nameless ache. This is a very hard exercise in forgiveness, not just forgiving them, but forgiving yourself for what you gave, for the moments you were fragile, for the parts of you that could have done better. Forgiveness here is not, "Okay, what they did was fine," or "Maybe we'll get back together." Sometimes forgiveness is simply, "It happened, it hurt me, but I don't want it to decide the rest of my life anymore." When you choose not to stalk their social media again, not to type out a long message and then delete it, not to send something just to prove I'm doing great, you are practicing a very quiet kind of inner freedom. No one sees it. No one claps for you. But your soul knows. And then there are people who do not do anything obviously wrong, but somehow they touch exactly the tender corners inside you. A family member who always compares you to someone else. A friend who only calls when they need to borrow something or unload their negative emotions. A boss who treats their own words as the only truth in the room. Here, the exercise is about wisdom and boundaries. Wisdom to recognize that their emotions are not always the truth about me. Boundaries to know that you have the right to say no, the right to step back, the right not to stay in conversations that leave you drained. When you gently say, "I'm a bit tired today. I don't think I can talk for long," or "I think this is something we should come back to later," when everyone's calmer, that is not weakness. It is a very soft kind of strength, the kind of strength outsiders might not understand, but your future self will be grateful for. Marcus did not write those Stoic lines just to make philosophy. He wrote because if he did not, he would drown. When he said, "People are your proper occupation." He was reminding himself, every time I meet a difficult person, a frustrating situation, a comment that makes my face burn, this is not an exception that ruins my day. This is my day. This is a class period that has been quietly scheduled into my timetable. The same goes for you. Your life does not happen outside of those small moments with other people. It happens inside each of your responses to them. Each time you choose patience instead of explosion, honesty without cruelty, setting a boundary instead of swallowing everything in silence, forgiving yourself instead of punishing yourself again. You are changing something in the inner structure of who you are, not loud, but very real. If tonight you feel like you have already slipped a few times, snapped at someone, sent messages you are not proud of, gossiped about someone behind their back, it is okay. Marcus did too. Every time he realized he had not responded well to someone, he did not sit there insulting himself all night. He unrolled the scroll, wrote it down, looked directly at that reaction, and whispered something simple. Next time, I will try to do it differently. The difference does not lie in whether we ever make mistakes, but in what we do with each mistake. Other people, the way they treat you, the way they hurt you or support you, all of that, every day, is helping shape you into some version of yourself. The question, very gentle and also very deep, is, if life is a training ground, who am I letting these interactions turn me into? In the next part, we will go a little further, not only looking at people, but also at adversity, failure, the things that stand right in front of you, not as walls, but as doors. But before we go there, you might give yourself a few quiet seconds. Gently remember someone who has irritated you recently, not to judge them again, but just to ask yourself, if that person was a practice exercise sent to me, what might this exercise be training in me? You do not need to answer right away. Let the question just lie there, quietly, tonight. We only need to begin from one very soft realization. People are not standing between you and a peaceful life. It is the way you respond to them, one interaction at a time, that becomes the road leading you to that peace. There are days when the obstacle does not have a human face. It is the alarm ringing when all you want is 10 more minutes of sleep. It is the same old desk, the same document opened so many times. You practically know every line by heart. It is the job you have done long enough that you feel no excitement anymore, but not long enough or bad enough to justify leaving. You sit there, your hands still typing, your mouth still smiling out of politeness, but deep down, there is a small, quiet sigh. So this is it. Is this really all my life is going to be? When we think of adversity, we usually imagine big events, being laid off, a breakup, a loss that drops you to your knees. But for most of us, what wears us down the most is not the sudden shock, but the repeating days that are not bad enough to throw everything away, but not alive enough to feel truly lived. Every day is fine, but inside, you are not very fine. You hate that feeling. You blame the circumstances, blame the environment, blame yourself for not having the courage to do something different. And it is very easy to conclude, it's this job that's blocking my path. It's this city that's blocking my path. It's this situation that's stopping me from living the way I'm meant to. Marcus Aurelius has a line that has been quoted over and over again. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The thing that stands in your way, if seen clearly, can become exactly the path you need to walk. At first glance, it sounds too philosophical, so let us bring it down to something simpler. The job you are bored of right now might be the first place where you are forced to learn how to set boundaries. Learn how to say no. Learn how to respect your own time and energy. The toxic environment you complain about might be the mirror that shows you how cheaply you have been willing to trade your own values, and how much courage it will take for you to step out. The failure you are ashamed of and want to hide might be the very thing that lowers your ego, just enough so that from now on, you can look at life with softer eyes and own your choices more honestly. What you hate might be exactly what is shaping you the most. Let us come back to the boring job, day after day. It quietly lays a series of questions before you. When no one praises you, will you still do the work properly? When no one is watching, will you still give that extra 1%? When nothing seems worth your full effort, will you still keep a basic standard for yourself? From far away, that job looks like a meaningless conveyor belt. But if you look closer, very close, it is the place where you practice discipline, showing up on time, doing your part well, focus, doing one thing thoroughly, attention, not letting your mind drift endlessly into distant what-ifs. When you do small things well, even while knowing in your heart, this is not where I want to stay forever, you are not resigning yourself. You are building a foundation that you will carry with you whenever you change direction later. From this angle, that job is no longer a wall between you and your ideal life. It becomes a school, a training ground, a stretch of road that if you walk it fully, you will step out with a very different kind of endurance. And then there are obstacles that look like a broken relationship. One day, you realize the two of you have reached the end of a shared road. Messages become less frequent. Conversations turn awkward. One person lets go first, or both of you become so tired that no one bothers to hold on anymore. Your heart hurts in its own unique way. No two people are the same. Some people try to forget as fast as possible. Some people torment themselves for months. Somewhere in between, a small whisper may appear. I wish we had never met. I wish this had never happened. But if you look from Marcus's angle, if you see that relationship as a written part of your life story, the question may shift into, what did this teach me about myself? Maybe it shows you how low you once set your own worth, accepting things you should not have accepted. Maybe it teaches you that love is not about erasing yourself, not about holding on so tight that both of you cannot breathe. Maybe it brings into focus old wounds inside you, cracks that had been there a long time, now finally visible. You have the right to be sad, the right to cry, the right to feel regret. But in the middle of all of that, if there is one tiny moment in which you can whisper to yourself, even this is part of my story, then that misfortune is no longer just something that happened to you. It becomes something that builds you. And then there is the obstacle called failure. A project you believed in falls apart. An exam you fail. An opportunity you miss by a hair. The outside world has many labels for it. Bad luck. Someone sabotaged you. The circumstances were against you. But the inner world is where it will be decided what that failure turns into. It can become a heavy stone on your back, something that makes you feel useless every time you think about it. But it can also become a very straight mirror. Did I prepare seriously? Was I delusional about anything? Was there something within my control that I simply ignored? The answers may hurt you one more time, but that honesty is exactly what opens up something else, your capacity to take responsibility. When you can say to yourself, yeah, I really was overconfident then. I really did not study enough. I really let my emotions drive the wheel. You are getting back up on your own 2 feet, not standing on the feeling that I am a victim of everything. Failure, from being a door slammed in your face, suddenly turns into a step. How high or low it is depends on how you step onto it. Of course, saying all of this is always easier than living it. No one listens to one video and then wakes up the next day ready to embrace every hardship with a smile. Even philosophers like Marcus and Seneca had their collapsing days. Their days of writing the same reminders to themselves over and over again. The small difference lies here. They did not ask, how do I get rid of all obstacles? They asked, with this many obstacles, who can I become? The same is true for you. Life will not suddenly clear the path for you. Your job will still have dull days. People will still sometimes hurt you. Plans will still sometimes fall apart halfway. But if each time it happens, you step half a step back, take a deep breath, and ask, is there any way I can use this? Is there something I can learn, instead of just enduring it? Then something very strange begins to happen. You are still living the same life, but its flavor changes. Tonight, if you are standing in the middle of some obstacle, a deadline that makes you feel like you cannot breathe, a room you no longer feel you belong in, a chapter of life you have no idea how to get out of, I cannot say to you, everything will work out. Don't worry. No one has the right to promise you that, but I can sit next to you for these quiet minutes and invite you to hold one small thought in mind. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Who knows? The thing standing right in front of you may not be a wall, but the very first door. A little later, when we talk about the image of the rock in the waves, we will go deeper into how not to be swept away by everything that happens. But right now, you only need to do one very small thing. Look at one thing you currently hate in your life. Not to blame yourself, but to quietly whisper, if this is a mandatory part of my story, what kind of person do I want to let it shape me into? You do not need a clear answer. Just let the question be there, floating along with your breath. As the night deepens a little more, there is a slightly harsh truth that anyone who lives long enough will see. Life is rarely quiet. Even when you are lying still in your room, out there, something is always moving. News, deadlines, money, health, relationships, things you can control, and countless things you cannot. The world does not wait for you to be okay before it starts getting messy. It keeps spinning in its own chaotic rhythm. So if you are waiting for a day when everything finally settles down, and only then you will allow yourself to be at peace, you may be waiting for a very long time. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, in essence, that we should be like the rock against which the waves crash. Be like the rock against which the waves crash. The waves do not stop for the rock. They keep coming, layer after layer, loud, violent, seeming as if they could swallow everything. But the rock does not throw itself into battle with the waves. It does not run away either. It stays. Not because it cannot feel the force of impact, but because there is something in its core more solid than the storm on the surface. Marcus did not write that line on a beach. He wrote it in the middle of war, plague, political instability. In the middle of the bad news a Roman emperor had to hear every single day. He understood very clearly. The waves out there were not going to wait for him to finish meditating before they crashed in. As for you, your waves may not be armies or plagues, but very ordinary things. A notification at 11 p.m. pulling you into a pointless argument online. A message from someone you are no longer close to, but every time their name appears, your heart still skips a beat. A call from family, with the same old sentences about expectations, comparisons, criticism, plus all the news out there. Some war somewhere, prices going up. Someone going through something terrible. Everything pours in at once, and your mind becomes a small sea that never truly rests. You are not wrong for feeling exhausted. You are not weak for wanting to disappear from everything for a while. But tonight, instead of trying to imagine a future where there are no more waves, we can try something gentler. How can we let the storm outside not automatically become a storm inside? The starting point is very small, and it lies in something the Stoics cherished: the pause between stimulus and response. There is a very thin space we usually skip over. Message comes, gives, we ignite, gives, we type, we send. Someone says something, gives, we hurt, gives, we strike back. Or we stay silent while a storm rages in our head. Marcus trained himself to watch that thin space very closely because he knew that is where freedom lives. Imagine this: every time a wave hits a harsh comment, an annoying remark, a piece of news that makes you anxious in that split second when everything is about to flare up, you slip in one tiny question. Is this just noise? Or is this really worth trading my peace for? It is not a question for philosophy. It is simply a reminder to yourself: if I chase everything, I will be drained before I even have a chance to live. For example, someone drops a line online. You act like you're so wise. You read it, and your heart sinks for a beat. The first reflex is, all right then, let's see who really understands more. Your fingers itch to type back, to explain, to argue, to be sarcastic. But then, in the middle of that urge, you step back half a second in your mind and ask, if I type all of this out and hit send, will I actually feel lighter or just more tired? Sometimes you will still choose to reply, and that is okay in important matters. Truth and boundaries matter, but many other times, just adding that one question before reacting is enough for you to decide. Let it pass. You are not letting them win. You are simply refusing to let their one sentence take over your heartbeat, your breath, your entire evening. Or in real life, a familiar voice repeats the same old line, at your age, other people already, and then fills in the blank with whatever comparison they prefer. Every time you hear it, old scratches inside you sting again. Your usual reflex is to shrink into yourself, keep quiet to get it over with. Then later, blame and resent yourself for letting them get to you again. The pause here might be one slower breath and a quiet reminder in your head. This is their voice, not the truth about me. From that pause, you can choose how to respond. Maybe you gently change the subject. Maybe you say calmly, everyone has their own pace. I'm still trying my best in mine. Maybe they will not understand. Maybe they will say the same thing next time. But every time you keep your calm a little more, every time you do not let their words trigger a full storm inside you, you are training yourself in the quality of the rock. You still feel, but you are not swept away. What matters is this: being the rock does not mean being numb. The rock still hears the waves. You still feel, still hurt, still get sad, still ache. No one is asking you to become so enlightened that no matter what message you get, you feel nothing. Stoicism does not ask you to turn into wood or stone. It offers you a way not to turn every feeling into a flood that washes away everything good inside you. You can be sad without becoming bitter. Be angry without destroying everything. Be disappointed without deciding I'm useless, I'm nothing. The storm outside stays a storm, but inside you keep at least one small corner calm. Calm enough to look and ask, who do I want to be standing in front of this? To get there, Marcus trained himself not only in the big things, but in the very small ones. A clumsy servant spilling food, a soldier making a mistake, a companion saying something foolish. He reminded himself, other people are also wrestling with their inner lives, just like he was. They have their fears, their wounds, their stories in their heads that he knows nothing about. The moment he remembered that, his gaze toward them softened. The first wave of anger, of irritation, lost some of its force. From there, he had enough space to choose. In this situation, what is the next right thing I can do? Sometimes it was forgiveness. Sometimes a correction. Sometimes a boundary. But whatever he chose, it did not come from, I have to win, but from the question, what kind of person do I want to keep alive inside myself? Tonight you can do a very small exercise. Write in your bed, no notebook, just memory and a bit of honesty. Gently recall a recent wave, an argument, a comment, a sentence that stung, or any bad news. Try to replay it in your mind, but a little slower. Look for the exact moment you started to be swept away. What was it? A particular sentence? Their facial expression? Or was it a thought that rose up in your own mind? Something like, this always happens to me. No one ever respects me. I must be worthless. If you can see that moment, you have found the rock's foothold. Next time, when a similar wave comes, you do not have to be perfect. You only need to add in one small whisper. Wait, I can pause for half a second before I let the story in my head run on. Just half a second, but sometimes that is the line between a day being destroyed and a day that just ripples a little and then settles again. No one is born a rock. We are born like water. The wind blows and we ripple. A stone drops in and we shatter into circles. Asterisk, but with each piece of practice, with each small moment we manage to keep a pause before reacting. We add to ourselves a bit more weight, a bit more grounding, a little more steadiness than not. Everyone will understand. This is the kind of peace that does not need the world to be peaceful first. The world is allowed to be loud, and you are allowed not to let everything rush straight into your heart without passing through a door. In the next part, we will go one layer deeper, not just standing firm in the waves, but learning to love what life throws at us. Amor fati, love of fate, sounds distant, but it actually begins with the simplest stories. Something that once made you collapse. But when you look back, you realize it helped create the person you are today. For now, you only need to slow your breath a little, let your shoulders soften, and notice one small thing out there. There may still be many unfinished tasks. But in this exact moment, as you listen to these words, the storm inside you can quiet down by half a notch. Just half a notch is enough for you to sense, maybe, peace is not as far away as you thought. There is a concept people often mention when they talk about Stoicism, amor fati, the love of fate. At first, it sounds uncomfortable. What does it mean to love fate? Does it mean loving the things that hurt us? Loving the times we were abandoned, betrayed, misunderstood? If you only skim the phrase, amor fati can easily be mistaken for a kind of passive resignation. Whatever life throws at me, I'll just take it. I guess that's just my destiny. But for Marcus and for the Stoics, it is something very different. Amor fati is not forcing yourself to believe that everything is good. A painful breakup does not suddenly become wonderful. A childhood full of wounds does not automatically turn into a gift. A betrayal does not stop hurting just because you changed your perspective. Stoicism does not ask you to pretend like that. Amor fati only whispers something softer. Even this is part of my story. Not everything is good, but everything can become useful if you allow it to teach you something. Try thinking of one event in your life that, if you could choose again, you would probably still wish if only that had never happened. Maybe it was a time when someone you trusted spoke to you with crushing words. Maybe it was when you lost a big opportunity because of one small mistake. Maybe it was a season of your life spent in anxiety, with no one truly understanding you, no one really there in the way you needed, and you had to swim through it alone back then. If someone had come to you and said you should love those experiences, you would have wanted to turn away as fast as possible. But if you look from where you are now, with everything you have lived since then, with all the ways you have grown, you might notice something very quiet. If that period had never happened, you would not see life with the eyes you have today. You would not have the depth of empathy you have now. You would not understand what human fragility feels like, or how much can change just because one person decides to listen. You do not have to thank your pain, but you can acknowledge that it has shaped a part of you. There is a very blunt, very stoic sentence. The thing you hate might be the thing that saves you. The thing you hate might have saved you from another version of yourself, a more shallow, arrogant, impulsive version. You might hate the time in your life when you had nothing, when you had to count every coin, turn down invitations just because your wallet could not handle it. But if you look closely, maybe that time taught you to cherish small things, not to spend money or emotions unconsciously, to understand the value of enough instead of always chasing a lot. You might hate the years spent in a job you did not love, but maybe that is exactly where you learned what you truly need in a workplace, what you can no longer tolerate, and what kind of life you actually deserve. You might hate the person who hurt you the most, but maybe they showed you more clearly than anyone else how weak your boundaries once were, how completely you used to abandon yourself in love, not to glorify the pain, but to admit the truth. It contributed to who you are, whether you wanted it to or not. The ancients often used the image of fire. Fire does not choose what is thrown into it. Dry wood, rotting leaves, broken branches, trash. Whatever is tossed in, it does not complain. I only want to burn fragrant wood. Don't throw such dirty things into me. It does one thing. It burns, and it shines brighter. Human beings are much more complicated than fire. We have memories, regrets, comparisons, and what-ifs. But if we could borrow even a bit of that spirit, then amor fati becomes a gentle reminder. Life will throw all kinds of things at me. I can hate them, but I can also use them as fuel to become deeper, warmer, steadier. You do not have to smile the moment something bad happens. No one can do that, amor fati. Only asks softly, after you have cried, after you have hurt enough, what do you want to do with this shard? Do you want to keep cutting yourself with it, or use it to carve something new? There are memories that still make your chest ache every time they surface. A breakup with no goodbye, a rejection that made you feel small, a bad decision that cost you something precious. Sometimes, we shove those memories into the darkest corner, pretending they never existed, but they are still there, slipping into our present choices, making us either overprotective or repeat the same patterns simply because we have never looked them in the eye. Amor fati does not tell you to be more positive. It invites you to do something braver. Take that memory out. Lay it gently on the table and ask, what did this teach me? Am I going to let it stay just as pain, or do I want it to become a lesson? Sometimes the answer is just a single short line. From now on, I will not abandon my own feelings. I will not lower my worth just to keep someone from leaving. I will not let the fear of being left behind control every choice I make. Small, but that is how you turn something bad into material. Not material to decorate some glamorous story, but material to live more truthfully. You might be asking, but what about things that are truly horrible? How can anyone love fate then? No one has the right to stand outside your life and say, that was a good thing. Some things are simply unfair, wrong, cruel. Amor fati does not deny that. It only says that if it has already become part of your timeline, if it has already happened and cannot be undone, then there is one piece of choice left to you. Will you let it turn you into someone bitter, completely closed off? Or will you let it teach you to see more deeply, care more deeply, and be more careful with other people's wounds? Some people, after being hurt, tell themselves, from now on, I'll never trust anyone again. Others, after a similar kind of hurt, whisper, from now on, I'll do my best not to make anyone feel the way I once felt. Same pain. Two people, two directions. Amor fati lives in that choice. If you look closely, you will see there are people who are quietly extraordinary. They have not had an easy life. They have lost things, broken down, cried in the most literal way, and yet somehow they are warm. They know how to listen. They know how to place a hand on someone's shoulder at exactly the right time. It is not because they were luckier than you. It is because at some point they chose not to let their pain turn them into something cold. They let it deepen their heart, but not freeze it. That is a very beautiful form of amor fati, not loving what happened, but loving who they became because they learned how to use what happened. Tonight, before you drift into sleep, you can try a small exercise, something deeply private that no one else needs to know about. Gently choose one difficult memory, not the most traumatic one, just something that still makes your chest tighten a little when you remember it. You do not have to forgive it right away, or let it go immediately. Just sit beside that memory a little longer, as if you were sitting next to a friend you once had a huge fight with. But tonight, both of you are simply too tired to argue, and in that quiet, if you can whisper one sentence, just for your own ears, even this is part of my story. I don't yet know what to do with it, but I don't want it to be just a meaningless scar. That is enough, that you do not need to try harder. The seed of amor fati often begins with one small act of acceptance, like that. No one lives a life without at least one chapter they wish they could rip out of the book. Marcus had his wrong decisions too. His days of being swept up by anger, exhaustion, doubt. The difference was, he did not try to rewrite the past. He learned to write forward from there. More consciously, you can do the same. You do not need to change everything. You do not need to force yourself to be positive. You only need, whenever you look back at an old chapter, to add one more sentence after "I wish it had never happened. Since it did happen, how do I want to move forward from here?" That is how you begin to love your fate, not with naivety, but with a very quiet courage. In the next part, we will touch on one very concrete habit Marcus used so he would not drown in all those chapters of his life. Writing, journaling, not to produce literature, but to pull the inner waves out into visible streams of ink. For now, you can let yourself be tired, soften a little more, and know this: no matter what has happened, the simple fact that you are still here tonight, trying to understand yourself even a little better, is already something deeply worthy of respect. There is something quite interesting about Marcus Aurelius. If you strip away all the titles, emperor, philosopher, all the statues and praise, what remains is a very ordinary image, a man, sitting alone every night with a pen, writing, not writing for anyone to read, not writing to publish a book. The pages later called Meditations were really just notes to himself. Writing, for Marcus, was not a hobby. It was how he kept from going mad in the middle of chaos. If you notice, sleepless nights are rarely because the body is too awake. They happen because the mind is too loud. You lie down, the lights are off, everyone else is asleep. But your head feels like a browser with too many tabs open, a sentence from this morning that irritated you, next week's deadline, your bank balance, a friend you still have not replied to, a promise you made to yourself but have not kept, all looping, stacking on top of each other into a low, humming noise that you cannot quite name. You know you should sleep, but the more you try to stop thinking, the more your brain thinks. Marcus knew that loop 2, in his own version, war, politics, disease, the responsibility for an entire empire. He chose something very simple, to pull the inner waves out into lines on a page. When a thought stays only in your head, it tends to grow larger. It runs in circles, dragging along fears and assumptions, until you no longer know what is really happening and what is just a story you are telling yourself. But when you write it down, it slows. From a vague mass, it becomes sentences, words, lines with a beginning and an end. That is what journaling does. It slows down the current in your mind. It turns foggy emotions into something you can see, and once you can see them, you have a chance to understand them instead of just being swept away. Marcus used ink and parchment. You can use a notebook, the Notes app on your phone, or even write in your mind as a quiet conversation with yourself. The tool does not matter. The intention does. Let me see myself a little more clearly. People often think journaling has to be well written, neatly concluded, properly structured, and so they give up. But Marcus did not write like that. He scribbled scraps, short reminders, little dialogues with himself, who he lost his temper with that day, where he let his pride take over, how he forgot to live according to what he said he believed. Sometimes just a few lines, sometimes repeating the same idea over and over, because the purpose of journaling is not to create a masterpiece, but to sculpt the soul. Each line is a small strike of the chisel. No one hears it, but over time, the statue inside you changes shape. Tonight, you do not need a brand new notebook or a fancy pen. You only need one honest minute. You can try 3 very small steps like these. Write down what feels heaviest right now. No need to make it sound nice, just make it true. I'm worried about. I'm angry about. I'm scared of. Write what, in this situation, is still in your hands. The answer might be, I can email and ask for more time. I can tell that person honestly how I feel. I can turn off social media for a day. Write one very short reminder to yourself, tomorrow. The next right thing I'll do is, that's it. No need for deep analysis, no need to plan your whole life. Just one next step, truthful with yourself. Journaling also helps you see what you are avoiding. When you write each night, even just a few lines, you will start to notice certain themes keep coming back. A friend who always makes you feel small. A job you complain about but have not dared to leave. A habit that fills you with shame. A pattern of reacting that you keep repeating with the people closest to you. At that point, your notebook becomes a mirror. It does not judge. It simply reflects back exactly what you have been bringing to it. You can keep ignoring it. But every time you turn the page and see the same frustration, the same complaint, the same promise to yourself, repeated again, there will be a tiny moment when you think, maybe it's time I do something a little differently. Not because anyone told you to, not because some self-help book said so, but because you've seen yourself clearly enough that you no longer want to look away. Journaling is also a very gentle way to talk to the fragile parts of you. There are things you're shy to tell anyone, shy to say out loud, but you can write them down. The times you felt small when being compared to someone else. The times you felt lonely in your own home. The times you felt not good enough, not attractive enough, not something enough. Writing will not make those feelings disappear overnight, but writing makes them a little less alone. You no longer have to carry that whole backpack of emotions into bed with you. You set them down on the page, like putting a heavy bag off your shoulders, at least for a while. Sometimes just rereading the lines you yourself wrote is enough to make you see yourself as a bit more endearing, a bit less harsh toward your own heart, because it turns out, under all the effort to be strong, you're also just a person trying to figure out how to live in a way that feels okay. If you're in a complicated relationship with family, with a partner, with yourself, journaling becomes even more important. When you write down how you reacted to that person today, what you said, what you felt in your body, you start to see patterns. Every time you're afraid of losing someone, you tend to silence your own feelings. Every time you feel abandoned, you flip into attack mode and say sharper things than you mean. Every time someone brings up an old mistake, you instantly go on the defensive and cannot really hear anything anymore. When these things are not written down, they're just, that's how I am. Once they appear on the page, often enough, they become things you can actually choose to keep or to slowly change. You do not need to transform overnight. It's enough that in the next argument, because you've written it down before, you recognize you're about to repeat the same old pattern and manage to stop one sentence earlier than usual. That alone is already a very real change. Journaling does not have to happen at a desk in some serious posture. It can be 5 minutes in bed before you sleep, with your phone on airplane mode and a note called Things I Noticed Today. You can write without accents. Use abbreviations. Mix Vietnamese and English. Write in whatever style feels most breathable to you, because the only purpose is to pull the unconscious up into awareness, to talk with yourself, and to remind yourself of what you already know is right, but often forget, for those who tend to feel anxious before sleep. Writing down the tasks for tomorrow is also a way to put them outside your head. You no longer need your brain to hold everything. Your brain only has to hold one job: to sleep. Tonight, if you've listened this far, chances are your heart has already begun to feel a little less tired. If you can, after this video ends, before you fully drift off? You might open a new note and try 3 short lines today. The thing that tired me out the most was, in that situation, what I can do is, tomorrow, the smallest right thing I'll try is, no need to write long. No need to try to feel the philosophy. Write as if you were talking to a very close friend, someone you don't need to perform for anymore. That friend is you. After each long day of court armies, bad news, good news. Marcus also had nothing but himself and a page. He wrote to remember that other people are just the training ground. Adversity is the path, and fate, even the hardest parts, can become material to live more rightly. Journaling is the thread that ties those ideas to real life. Without it, all understanding stays in the head, beautiful, but quick to fade. With it, each day you move a tiny distance, but you move for real. In the next part, we'll step into a territory many people are afraid to face: love and big emotions, how to love without losing yourself, how to be full of love but free of destructive passion. For now, if your eyes are getting heavy, if your breathing has slowed, give your mind a very gentle reminder. Tonight, I don't have to solve everything. I just need to be a little more honest with myself. The rest, I can leave for tomorrow. If you open any human being's journal, whether in Marcus time or now, you will almost always find one theme repeating: love, people we care about, people we once cared about, people we want to move closer to, but don't know exactly where to stand. We can endure many things alone, but when it comes to love, the most fragile part of us often shows itself. Stoicism is often misunderstood as a cold philosophy, as if it teaches us to suppress emotions, to love less, to attach less. But if you read carefully, you'll see they are not against love. They are wary of one distorted form of it, when love turns into obsession, dependence, control. Seneca once wrote, "He suffers more than necessary, who suffers before it is necessary." It sounds like it's about worry, but in love, it fits too. Very often, we suffer not only because of what is happening, but because of the hundreds of stories we tell ourselves in our heads about how, if this person leaves, we will not survive. There are 2 very different kinds of love that often get mixed together in real life. One is love, wanting what is good for the other person, even when that good does not always match what you want. Love like this has warmth, affection, longing, but it still leaves space for respect for your own boundaries and theirs. The second is destructive passion. It speaks in very dramatic lines. Without you, I can't live. If you change, then everything in me will be okay. I need you to be there in exactly that role, for me to feel like I have value. It sounds like a declaration of love, but underneath is a cage. The other person becomes your only source of life. Every message, every scene with no reply, can trigger a storm that controls your entire emotional weather. The Stoics don't tell us to love less. They simply ask, do you want your love to be a refuge or a cage you built yourself? You may have felt this before. Before meeting someone, your life wasn't perfect, but you were living. You had small joys, your own habits, your own plans for the future. Then you met them. Everything seemed a bit brighter. You wanted to share more, give more, tell them about the little details of your day. That part is beautiful. There's nothing wrong with it, but over time, if you pay attention, you might notice a line starting to blur. The things you used to do for yourself slowly get dropped. Your friendships and personal interests shrink just to make more time that overlaps with theirs. You say, I less, and we more. At some point, you look back and realize I no longer know who I am besides being theirs. That is when love begins to change color. Stoicism invites us to this. Love with a full heart, but with open hands, full of love, but free of destructive passion. This does not mean being shallow or ready to leave at any moment. It means still loving deeply, still caring wholeheartedly, but not compressing all your worth into one person. You might say, having you in my life, I'm grateful. But if one day, for whatever reason, we no longer walk the same road, I will hurt. But I will not let my life end there. This sentence is rarely spoken out loud. It lives in your attitude, in the way you still keep your own pieces. You keep learning. You keep nurturing independent hobbies. You keep caring for relationships beyond your romantic one. You keep in touch with yourself through journaling, through quiet moments alone. The other person is not everything to you. They are a very precious part, but not the whole. There is a very subtle kind of dependence, not financial, not about time, but dependence on meaning. You believe that if this person leaves, life loses all meaning. If they're busy, your day suddenly feels half empty. If they go quiet, you shrink, wonder what you did wrong, and start dissecting every detail of your past conversations. The Stoics do not deny that pain. They only ask, is it fair to let the meaning of your entire life be held entirely in someone else's hands? When you hand your emotional power switch to another person, you also put on their shoulders a weight no human can carry. Even the kindest, warmest person cannot always be in the right place, in the right way, saying the right words, exactly when you need them. And so, love shifts from being a place where both come to be warmed, into a place where both are exhausted by expectations. Stoic-style love is not about being always rational, never stirred, never jealous, never missing someone. You will still feel all of that. But in the middle of loving, you keep one small corner for clarity, to notice when you're trying to control the other person, to pause when you're about to send a message just to test them, to avoid turning the person you love into painkillers for everything else in your life. You might miss them a lot, but you do not text non-stop just to fill an inner emptiness. You might be very angry, but instead of going silent to punish them, you choose to say honestly, this hurts me. I need some time, but I don't want to let this turn me into someone I'm not. That is not playing games. It is a kind of discipline of the heart. For those who have been deeply hurt, loving again in a healthy way is a long journey. You may once have promised yourself, I won't love again. I won't trust again. I won't let anyone get that close again. At that time, those promises were how you protected whatever part of you was still standing. But if you stay in defense mode forever, life slowly narrows. There is no space left for genuine closeness, no chance for deep connection, the kind where you and another person sit side by side, both looking toward the same horizon. Stoic love means accepting risk, but with your eyes open. You do not rush in just to fill a hole. You step forward with your heart, and with everything you've learned from old wounds. You might say, if not in words, then in how you act. I want to love you, but I also want to keep the promise I made to myself, not to abandon myself again. One sign of love with boundaries is that, after some time, you look back and see you have not lost other important relationships. You have not dropped everything that once made you feel alive. Reading, drawing, walking, learning. You have not turned into a version of yourself permanently waiting for a reply. You may still wait, still hope, still feel a lift in your chest when your phone lights up. But if a message arrives later than you expected, it does not completely ruin your day. Inside that space, there is a very gentle freedom, the freedom to love, and the freedom not to be owned entirely by love. Tonight, if a specific person comes to mind, someone you love now, or once loved, you do not need to redefine everything. You do not need to force yourself to love in the correct Stoic way. That already sounds exhausting. You can simply ask yourself, quietly, when I think about this person, do I feel myself expanding or shrinking? If most of the time you feel yourself shrinking, dropping things that matter to you, bending your boundaries, enduring more than you are living truthfully, then perhaps, somewhere, love has wandered too close to the realm of destructive passion, not to declare right or wrong, just to know where you're standing. From that awareness, you can gently shift things for yourself and, if possible, for them too. In the pages of Meditations, Marcus rarely speaks directly about romantic love the way we do now, but he speaks a lot about the qualities of the heart, about kindness, about gentleness, about not letting bitterness take over all the space inside. A Stoic heart is not a closed heart. It is a heart that has been through fire, knows there are things it should not cling to, but stays warm enough to hold someone close within a safe boundary. Be full of love, but free of destructive passion. Not a slogan, a direction for long, patient practice. Every time you choose to tell the truth instead of using silence to punish. Listen to your own feelings instead of forcing yourself to just be strong. Keep a part of your life that is yours alone. Instead of melting completely into the other person, you move a little closer to that way of loving. In the next part, we'll talk about something closely tied to love and really to every part of life. Be one. Don't just talk about your values. Become them. Because if inside you there is a tug of war, one part wanting to live in alignment, another part ready to throw away all your principles just to keep someone, your heart will always be tired. For now, as the night has deepened a little more, you can place a hand on your chest very gently and remind yourself, I have the right to love, but I also have the right to stay with myself. For tonight, that is enough. The rest, you can leave for tomorrow when you were little. You might have heard adults say a very common line, RNJEPHI by TIU, V on H, TH Sao CNG, C. Out there, you have to behave. At home, you can be however you like. Growing up, you begin to see other versions of the same idea online. You can say whatever you want. In real life, you must protect your image. With close friends, you speak one way. With family, you speak another. At work, you're professional. At home, you're exhausted, irritable, and everyone closest to you gets what's left. Slowly, a different you for every situation. A bit here, a bit there. At some point, if someone sincerely asked you, so who are you really at your core? You might hesitate. Not because you're fake, but because you've been divided into pieces without even noticing. Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics often returned to one idea. Don't just talk about your values. Become them. Be one. Be one, not one, but one axis of life. Marcus wrote, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. It sounds simple, but to actually live like that, in a world pulling you in 100 directions, is a long, slow training. Try looking back at a typical day. In the morning, you might share a philosophical quote online about not gossiping behind people's backs, about kindness, about mutual respect. By noon, you happen to be sitting in a group of friends. The conversation drifts into making fun of someone who isn't there. You add one joke, laugh, and move on. At night, lying down. You don't think much about it, but there's a small pinch inside. Strange. I was so principled this morning. No one is judging you. The world keeps on spinning, but deep down, every time you do something that goes against what you say you believe, a small inner string gets pulled tight, pulled long enough. You start to feel tired, not tired because of other people, but tired because of yourself. Be one does not mean you have to be perfect, have to act exactly the same everywhere, always right, always noble. It simply means you keep trying to narrow the gap between what you say you value and what you actually do. Little by little, if you value kindness, you practice pausing for half a second before saying something that will humiliate someone. If you value honesty, you practice not exaggerating or trimming details just to make yourself look better. If you say, "I want to live slower," you try turning off a few notifications. Instead of saying it and then letting your phone drag you around all day, you don't have to fix everything at once, but each time you pull those two things closer, your words and your actions, you feel a bit lighter, because you don't need to perform quite so many roles anymore. Journaling, what we talked about earlier, is also the tool Marcus used to notice when he was being split, like that dot. He wrote very directly to himself. No circling around, no dressing up his behavior with pretty names. If that day he let anger take over, he wrote it down. If that day he did something out of pride, he wrote it down. If that day he did not live up to the standards he set for himself, he wrote it down. But the important part is what came after. He did not use those lines to declare, "I'm terrible, I'm a hypocrite." He used them the way a craftsman looks at a blueprint. This line is off. Next time, I adjust here. That is, be one in a deeply human way, constantly correcting your trajectory, instead of demanding a perfectly straight line. If you pay attention, you may notice that most of our anxiety does not come from not knowing what to do, but from knowing and doing the opposite. You know you should sleep earlier, but you scroll through a few more videos. You know you shouldn't reply to messages when you're furious, but you hit send anyway. You know that saying "I'm busy" just to avoid a harder truth is not fair to the other person, but you pick that option because you don't want to face it on the end. No one sees those contradictions more clearly than you, and it's those inner conflicts, more than the situation itself, that make you restless when you are divided into pieces inside. One part wanting to be kind, one part wanting to hide, one part wanting everyone to like you, one part just wanting peace. Then any random comment from outside can easily hit one piece and throw you off balance. In contrast, when you slowly choose a clearer axis, for example, no matter where I am, I'll try not to do what goes against my own heart, then every decision, even the hard ones, becomes less tangled. You don't have to overcalculate. Will this upset someone? Will they think I'm? You just need to ask, in this situation, what's right according to my values? And step in that direction. Of course, you will drift off sometimes. There will be days you still gossip about someone, and only later realize. There will be times you promise yourself never to do something again, and a few weeks later, you repeat it. Marcus did too. He was not an exception. What made him different was that each time he noticed, he came back without delaying more than necessary. He did not let shame drag on forever. He did not build a home out of his mistakes and live there, saying, "That's just the kind of person I am." He acknowledged, adjusted, and moved on. Be one is not never off track. It is, as many times as you drift, that many times you return to the same center. You can imagine it like this. Inside each person is a house. If in every place you go, you buy a different set of furniture, a different set of rules, a different way of speaking. Over time, that inner house fills up with things that don't go together. One corner holds the beliefs you talk about with family. Another corner holds the persona you've built. Online. Another holds the ego you bring to work. Another hides the things you only admit to yourself at night. The house gets cramped, hard to breathe, and every time someone steps in, you have to rush to tidy one corner, hide a few things, and wonder, which version of me am I supposed to be right now? Inner alignment begins with clearing some of that out. You don't have to throw everything away. Just start choosing what is truly mine. What is just decoration I've put up to be accepted? Then slowly, keep what matches your values. Set aside what doesn't. The fewer temporary selves you carry, the easier it is to breathe, because you no longer have to remember which role you're playing today. One sign you're moving closer to be one is that you can confidently say, if someone met me at home, at work, online, and when I'm alone, they would see different shades, but they would still recognize it's the same person. Not always cheerful, not always gentle, but someone who holds the same standard for how they treat others and how they treat themselves. You don't act polite to strangers, then unload all your bitterness on the people you love. You don't preach compassion online, then in real life easily laugh at someone's awkward moment. You don't repeat mental health matters while quietly abandoning your own mental health. No. One gets all of this right at once, but every small action, every small choice is gathering you back into one person instead of 10 scattered fragments. Asterisk. If tonight you open a note and want to start from this topic, you could write, the values I truly want to live by are. Then let your hand fill it in. Kindness, honesty, listening, responsibility. Anything that genuinely touches you. After that, add one more line. Today, were there moments when I didn't live according to these? Not to beat yourself up, but to see clearly where you're being bent. From there, pick one tiny point to adjust. Just one. Next time the conversation turns to gossip, I'll stay quiet or change the subject. Next time I make a promise, I'll try my best to follow through, or if I really can't, I'll say honestly that I can't. Each time you keep one small promise, you lay one brick in the foundation of B1. Each time you break a promise to yourself, you also learn something, where your limits are, and how you might need to rearrange your life so you don't have to live in a constant state of saying a lot, doing little anymore. A person who is split is easily pulled by pressure, by other people, by temptation, because there is no inner axis to hold on to. A person who is slowly being one is not immune to everything, but they have somewhere to return to. Who am I when no one is watching? That answer, quiet, not necessarily grand, is what keeps them steady while everything outside is shifting. In the next part, we'll take one more step. Once you have an inner axis, you don't need to change careers, change cities, or overhaul your entire life to find meaning. You begin to see that any role, from emperor to intern, can become soil for you to train that inner person. For now, before you pull the blanket up a little higher, you might whisper to yourself, today, was there a place where I didn't live like the person I want to become? Tomorrow, I'll try, just once, to choose differently. No big declarations, no slogans, just remember, you don't need 10 perfect versions of yourself. You only need one person. Slowly, honestly, becoming who you are. There are nights when you lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, and ask yourself a very familiar question. Is this really all my life is going to be? A repetitive job, the same route back and forth. the same faces, tasks so familiar you could do them with your eyes closed. You look around and see people reinventing themselves, quitting jobs, studying abroad, starting businesses, stepping into new chapters that sound so meaningful. And you, waking up, still going to that same place, sitting in that same chair, doing the same work. It's very easy to conclude, I'm wasting my life. I haven't really lived, I'm just existing. People often sell each other an image, meaning equals a dramatic leap, change careers, change cities, change partners, change environments. Just be bold enough, and you'll find your true self somewhere out there. Sometimes those sharp turns are necessary. Some environments really are toxic. Some relationships really do erode you. Stepping out of them is a healthy act, not an escape. But if you believe that only by changing everything your life will finally become meaningful, then it's very easy to miss something Marcus and the Stoics have been whispering for thousands of years. Meaning does not lie in where you stand. It lies in how you show up where you are. Marcus was an emperor. At first glance, it's easy to think, of course, his life was meaningful. He ruled an empire. But if you strip the title away, his days were full of things that were not romantic at all. Meetings, documents, listening to arguments, resolving conflicts, facing difficult people from one angle. That's just administrative work on a very large scale. What made his life deeper was not being emperor, but his decision to use each part of that role as a training ground for his character. A tense meeting was a practice in calm. A hard decision was a test of fairness and compassion. A day of exhaustion was a lesson in limits and in being gentle with himself. He did not ask, should I have chosen a different path for my life to be more meaningful? He asked, within this position, what kind of person can I be? And you may not be an emperor, but you're standing in some role, an office worker, an intern, a barista, a caregiver, someone working from home in a small corner of a room. From far away, your job may not look impressive. It's not on the news. It doesn't come with a glittering title, but up close, very close, your day is also full of small training sessions. A difficult coworker tests the limits of your patience. A repetitive task tests your capacity for focus. A misaligned environment tests your courage. Will you dare to change when it's truly needed? You can hate all of that, or you can begin to see them as practice for your real profession. Your character is your craft. Your real work is not the job title on your CV, but how you are a human being in every circumstance. Imagine a very ordinary day. You arrive at work. The tasks you're given are nothing new. The same files to update, the same spreadsheets to fill, the same calls to return. If you see it as just a temporary job, it's very easy to do the bare minimum, to grumble your way through it, and to keep waiting for the day you finally step into a different life. But if you see it as a training ground, every small task becomes a question. Can I do this with kindness, even if no one praises me? Can I stay focused enough not to make mistakes I could completely avoid? Can I keep speaking respectfully, even when the person on the other end of the line is upset? You won't always manage it. There will be days you're annoyed, you complain, you give up, but every time you try, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. Someone who just finishes, or someone who does things properly. Someone who only waits for the clock to run out, or someone who uses those hours to train themselves. The difference lies in how you show up, not in where you sit. There are people doing the exact same job, yet living to very different lives. The first sees it as a sentence, going to work. feels like going to exile after 10 years. Their voice grows sharper, their eyes more tired. The second person, with the same salary, same office, same boss, uses everything as a training floor, training the ability to listen, training how to set boundaries, training how not to let other people's stress pour straight into them, training how to talk kindly to themselves during breaks. They don't have to love their job 100%, but they respect how they live inside that job. At the end of the day, they may still be tired, but they don't feel like they're being hollowed out, because instead of being only used by the environment, they are also using that environment to train something inside. Of course, not every environment is healthy. Not every workplace is worth staying in. There are places where you are treated so unfairly that your dignity is worn down. Places where your value is constantly trampled on. In those cases, your training ground may actually be the lesson of daring to leave, daring to admit, this place is turning me into someone I don't want to become, daring to accept the risk of changing direction, not because you're chasing passion, but because you want to protect the most decent part of yourself. Even that decision to leave, if made with clarity, is a very meaningful way of showing up. You're not just changing locations, you're changing how you treat yourself. Some people ask, what if my job has nothing to do with my passion? What if I'm just working to get by? That question is very real, and there's no simple answer. But there is one thing I can sit here and quietly remind you of. Sometimes, passion isn't written in the job description, it's written in how you gather the small pieces of your day into a life that feels meaningful. You do your work well, not for praise, but so you don't have to lower your eyes when you look at yourself. You treat colleagues kindly, not because they are 100% deserving, but because that's the kind of person you want to keep alive inside. You use the money you earn to feed what you believe in, a new skill, a personal hobby, people you love. You save time and energy, however little, for the things that make your eyes light up, even if no one pays you for them. Meaning is not a shiny job title. It's the feeling that each day you are betraying yourself a little less. You might be a server in a cafe from the outside. Someone might see simple manual work, but you know, every time you remember a regular's usual order, every time you genuinely smile at someone walking in, every time you choose not to snap back at a difficult customer, your training, your memory, your presence, your patience, your ability to face people without losing yourself. You might be an adult child caring for elderly parents or a sick relative at home. Outsiders may not understand. They might think you haven't done anything with your life. You just stay home. But you know that in those repetitive days, you're training a kind of strength no amount of money can buy. Perseverance, compassion, the capacity to stay with someone through the hardest moments. No one gives you medals for that, but those are exactly the things that carve out who you are. Marcus reminded himself, and indirectly reminds us, that no matter where you stand in the social hierarchy, the real question is the same. In this role, am I feeding my nature or wearing it down? If you feel yourself being worn down, you have two directions: adjust how you show up, or, once it's truly clear, adjust your circumstances themselves. Both require courage. Both are meaningful. Tonight, if your life feels so ordinary it's boring, if tomorrow you still have to wake up and go to that same place, see those same people, do those same tasks, I cannot promise you that a big door will suddenly open, but I can sit here in the middle of the night and invite you to try one different question before you sleep. If tomorrow is exactly the same as today, what kind of person do I want to be in that day? Not a successful person, not an inspirational person, just someone who keeps their word. Someone who doesn't unload their frustration onto innocent people. Someone who tries to do their part well, even when no one is watching. Someone who protects a small slot in the day to breathe, to write, to listen back to themselves. You don't need to change your life overnight. You only need to change how you show up in your life. Little by little. Meaning is not a destination. It's the feeling that, lying down at night, tired is still tired. But in your heart you know, today, amid all the imperfection, I did not completely abandon myself. And slowly, the way you show up like that will touch other people. A colleague feels safe around you. A family member feels a little less alone because they know you won't judge them. A stranger receives kindness from you, even if only for a few minutes. No one writes those moments down, but they sink deep, sometimes deeper than any achievement on paper. And that's when the next question naturally appears. In the end, what is the real legacy I'm leaving behind? Not statues, not captions, but the way people feel when they think of you. That's a story we'll whisper to each other in the next stretch of tonight's journey. For now, you only need to close your eyes a little, breathe deeply, and know this: however ordinary tomorrow may look, the way you walk through it has never been a small thing. If you look closely, you'll see humans carry a very quiet obsession. How do I make sure I'm remembered? It's not just about being famous. It's the feeling, I didn't live for nothing. I left some imprint on someone's life. Some people try to leave their mark through achievements, some through being different. Some only wish that later, when their name comes up, people won't just say, yeah, they were fine, I guess. Marcus Aurelius, ironically, was one of the people with the strongest reason to care about legacy. He was an emperor. His name was carved into stone arches, history books. If anyone could cling to the idea, I must be remembered forever, it would be him. Yet, in Meditations, he wrote something strange. All is ephemeral, fame, and the famous as well. Everything passes fame, and those who are praised. He reminded himself that the great emperors before him, the legendary generals, the revered philosophers, many of them are now just faint names in a few people's memories, soon to disappear completely. And he asked a very blunt question that, I think, still hits home today. Are you trying to be remembered? Or are you trying to be good? Are you trying to be remembered? Or are you trying to be good? If you sit still for a moment, you may realize that a huge portion of what we do ties back to being seen. We work harder, not only because we want to do well, but because we want someone to notice. We post something online, not only to share, but to feel that we exist in someone else's mind. It's not wrong. It's a very human need. We all want to be seen, acknowledged, remembered. But when we cling too tightly to that, it's easy to forget something much more important. What people remember about us is rarely our clever lines or lifetime achievements. Most of the time, what stays with them is how they felt when they were with us. How many grades from 9th grade do you still remember? How many award lists from your final year of high school? How many KP is from your first year at work? Maybe a few blurry numbers, but you probably still remember very clearly how one teacher looked at you when you stumbled through the wrong answer. A friend who sat and listened to you talk about your family one single time without looking at their phone. Someone who quietly texted, "Message me when you get home, okay?" On a night when you felt completely empty. Those moments don't appear in any file. They weren't photographed. No one gave out certificates, but they settled inside you as a thin, deep layer that is their legacy in your life. Marcus understood this. He knew that no matter how well he ruled, no matter how many battles he won, sooner or later future generations would argue, reinterpret, forget. The only thing really in his hands was how he treated the human beings right in front of him, those weaker than him, those who made mistakes, those who had nothing to offer him in the darkest days of the empire. His real legacy was not only in his political decisions, it was in whether he kept his compassion when power gave him every permission to be cruel. We, even though we rule no one, still carry small versions of the same question. When I hold the advantage, what do I choose? When I have the power to embarrass someone, do I do it? When I can get even, do I treat that as a victory? If today you think about your legacy, you don't need to think in grand terms. You don't need to imagine a farewell speech, a biography line, a statue, a loud, impressive achievement. You can try shrinking it down a lot at work. If tomorrow you moved somewhere else, what would people remember when they think of you? In your friend group, when you're not there, what shape does that empty space take? Are you the one who always has gossip, or the one I feel truly listened to when I sit next to? In your family, when you're quiet for a while, do people miss a voice that knows how to listen, that knows how to be honest without cutting deeper than necessary? Each of those small roles, each of those very ordinary answers, are the pieces that make up your real legacy, not bright, flashy colors, but a warm kind of light, hard to name. Yet anyone who touches it recognizes it. There's something slightly bitter here. It's very likely that most of our efforts to be remembered will be blurred out by time. The heartfelt posts, the view counts, the milestones we once thought were absolutely crucial at some point in our lives. But it's also very possible that just one evening we sat and listened to someone's story without judgment will live inside them for decades. A hug at the right moment. A simple, I believe in you. One time we took the blame for someone. One time we didn't push harder when they were already exhausted. Those things to us might feel small, but in their world, they may be an anchor. You can't control what people will say about you, but you can decide how you make people feel while they are with you right now. Maybe, in some quiet corner, you are like many of us, wanting to do something that matters, wanting to leave a mark, wanting to look back one day and not feel like you just drifted through. That isn't wrong. It gives us energy to try. But if you only look forward toward some future peak, it's easy to forget that every day right now is already a day. You are leaving traces in how you speak to the cashier, in how you reply to an email, in how you react when you're misunderstood, in how you treat someone who can do nothing for you. Those moments are legacy being written. Too, they just never get posted anywhere. Marcus didn't try to build a monument to himself. He built each day of his life. He corrected each reaction. He used each encounter with a human being as a place to practice virtue. And precisely because he didn't try to write a book for the ages, the things he wrote only for himself are what touch us so deeply today. Maybe the most beautiful legacy of a person is not what they tried to leave behind, but the things that fall out naturally from how they live day by day. Tonight, before you sleep, you might try a small exercise, like a gentle conversation with yourself. Imagine, not in a tragic way, but as a game of what if, that you're going to leave the place you live now for a long time. No one knows exactly when you'll be back. Ask yourself, what do you want to remain in people's hearts when they think of you? It doesn't have to be long. It might just be a few words. That person talked to me without ever looking at their screen. That person always kept their promises. That person made me feel like I wasn't as hopeless as I thought. That person never tried to prove they were better than anyone. But being around them made me want to be a better version of myself. Write down 1 or 2 lines like that. Not to force yourself to live exactly like that tomorrow, just so you know what kind of person you truly want to become. From there, each day, you choose one tiny action that leans in that direction. Real legacy is not about how many people know your name. It's about what the people who actually crossed paths with you feel in their hearts when they remember you. Maybe, in the end, no one remembers all the things you did, but they will remember whether they felt respected near you, whether they felt safe telling you the truth, whether they felt seen when they sat beside you, and you too, when you look back at yourself. You won't remember only the times you won, but the times you chose not to step on someone, even though you could. In the next part, we'll move into something very ordinary and very deep. You don't need a grand leap. You just need the next honest step, small but true, because everything we've talked about, people as the path, obstacles as the way, amor fati, journaling, love, legacy, all returns to one point each day in small moments. What do you choose to do? For now, before we go on, you can let your breath slow a little more and know this: whether you've done enough or not, the simple fact that you care about what feeling you leave in other people's hearts is already a very beautiful sign of the kind of person you're becoming. There's a very familiar pressure almost all of us have put on ourselves. This year, I have to be completely different from last year. This time, I have to change my life. Starting tomorrow, I'll become a new person. It sounds inspiring, but if you look closely, so often those big slogans make us more tired than helped. Because after those big words, we still have to live through very small days, still waking up, still eating, still working, still replying to messages, still living in the same body and the same life. When the big dream crashes into the small reality, many people choose to just give up, forget it. Maybe I can't change. Maybe this is just who I am. The Stoics, and Marcus too, rarely talked about huge leaps. They talked much more about the next step, but an honest one. The next honest step. Asterisk, not the perfect step, not the spectacular step, just the step which, if you look yourself in the eye, you know is the right thing to do right now. Even if it's so small, no one else will notice. Imagine you're standing in a messy room. Clothes, books, papers, cups, everything seems to be in the wrong place. If you stand in the middle and say, "Today I have to clean everything," you'll probably lie down instead. It feels overwhelming. You don't know where to start. But if you look around and say something softer, "Okay, for now, I'm just going to fold the clothes on the chair," you don't solve the whole room, but you fix one corner. When you're done, you might feel a little less suffocated and have the energy to do one more thing, or not. But even if you stop there, the room is still different from how it was. Your inner life is the same. Messy is normal. The question isn't, how do I become a completely different person today? But today, what is one small but honest thing I can do for myself? Maybe that small thing is simply answering a message you've been avoiding. Not a message from someone who hurt you, but from a friend you genuinely value, whom you've left unseen because you feel like you have no energy. Every time you open your phone, you see it sitting there like a tiny thorn, not big enough to force action, but sharp enough to remind you, right, I'm procrastinating again. The next honest step, in this case, might be as simple as open the conversation. Write one very honest line. "Things have been a bit overwhelming lately, so I'm replying late, but I'm really glad you wrote to me." then send it. You haven't solved everything piling up in your life, but you've loosened one knot. Your steps feel a little lighter. Sometimes, the honest step is not sending a message, you've just had an argument. Hundreds of sentences rise up inside you. Justifications, attacks, sarcastic lines, things you want to send so they will feel your hurt. Your finger hovers over send, but somewhere inside, a calmer part whispers, if I send this, will it really make me feel lighter, or will it pour more oil on the fire? The next honest step, then, might not be stay silent forever, or forgive and forget. It might simply be, don't send it right now. You put the phone down. You get a glass of water. You give yourself a few extra minutes for the emotion to settle half a notch. That is also a step small and very brave. Many people live in a state I'd call tired from promises to myself. Think back over the past year. How many times have you said to yourself, starting tomorrow, I'll wake up early. Next week, I'll work out regularly. From now on, I won't text that person anymore. From today, I'll write every day. Those from tomorrow, from now on, from today. Sentences sound powerful, but if we don't follow through, we're not just breaking a plan, we're breaking faith with ourselves. Each time, a bit of inner trust gets shaved away, until one day, when we say, this time is really different, we don't even believe ourselves anymore. The Stoics don't ask you to swear more grand vows. They invite you to do the opposite. Fewer promises, more honest steps. You don't need to say, starting tomorrow, I'll write every day for a year. You can just try. Today, I'll write for 5 minutes. Tomorrow, if you can, another 5. If you forget one day, it's okay. The next day, come back. No line like, forget it, I'm hopeless, only, okay, I missed a beat, let's adjust. Characters built from small bricks like that. Not from one explosive 10-hour session, but from doing a little each day, and each time you fall, getting up one more time. There's a quote shared often, you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. You are what you do, not what you declare you'll do. It sounds a bit harsh, but it's a very honest reminder. Intentions are beautiful. Plans are beautiful. Dreams are beautiful. But what shapes you is what you repeat every day. If you regularly keep your word to others, every small plan, every task you said yes to, you are becoming a reliable person, even if you've never once put the label reliable on your forehead. If you regularly swallow a sarcastic comment just so you don't hurt someone more, you are becoming a gentle person, even if you've never called yourself empathetic. If you regularly choose to stand on the side of what's right, in very small things, you are becoming someone with a backbone, even if you've never talked about integrity. Every small action is a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. The question is not, who do I want people to see me as? It's, today, which version of myself am I casting votes for? The next honest step isn't always about doing more. Sometimes, it's about doing less. Scrolling social media a little less, so you have 10 minutes to sit in silence. Saying yes to a few less favors, so you don't have to abandon yourself. Trying a little less to seem fine, so you have the chance to say, I'm not doing very well today. Some people spend their whole lives running after more, doing more, adding more, achieving more, but never stop to ask, where am I actually running to? The honest step, very often, isn't a step forward, but a step back, backing away from a relationship you know isn't healthy. Stepping out of an argument you know is pointless. Stepping away from an image of yourself that looks great from the outside but is draining you dry. Those are also steps that require a great deal of courage. When Marcus sat to write in his journal, he wasn't drawing a 10-year master plan for his ultimate version. He examined one day, one reaction at a time. Each time he slipped away from his own standards. Then he asked, next time, what can I do differently? Not, next time, I'll do everything right, but, next time, I'll try to be a bit better right here. Your inner life, from far away, may look like one long journey, but if you zoom in, it's just a chain of next honest steps like that. Tonight, right before you sleep, your next honest step might simply be admitting, I'm tired, I'm sad, I'm jealous, I'm afraid. No solutions needed, no pressure to be positive. Just calling it by its right name, instead of wrapping everything into one sentence. I'm probably just worthless. That alone is already a very big step. The problem with dramatic makeovers is that they demand a huge burst of energy and usually don't last long. You can stay up until 3 a.m. to write a plan to reinvent your life, but the next morning, when you still have to roll out of bed at 7, walk the same streets, reply to the same emails, face the same faces, that plan suddenly feels far away. By contrast, the small, honest, patient steps may seem slow, but they can actually cling to your real life. Every day, you still have to wake up, talk to people, face yourself in the mirror, do repetitive tasks. So every day there's room to practice one small step. Today, instead of eating while scrolling, I'll eat in silence for 5 minutes. Today, instead of scrolling until 2 a.m., I'll stop 15 minutes earlier and write a few lines to myself today. Instead of answering half-heartedly, I'll look the other person in the eye and answer honestly. No one is grading these steps, but you know. And each time you do it, you rebuild your trust with yourself. So it turns out I can do it, just slowly. Tonight, if you feel a bit overwhelmed by everything we've talked about since the beginning of this video, people as the path, obstacles as the way, amor fati, journaling, love, legacy, I want to invite you to do something very simple. When this video ends, before you fall asleep, choose one small step, just one, that you know in your heart is right for you. It could be writing 3 lines in a notebook. It could be sending one apology message. It could be turning your phone off 10 minutes earlier than usual. It could be quietly telling yourself, that thing already happened. I'm hurting, but I don't want to torture myself with it anymore tonight. Don't pick many, just one. Then tomorrow, if you remember, pick one more step. If you forget, then next time you remember, pick again. There is no more chances. There is only this time I remembered and last time I slipped. Our real strength as a person doesn't lie in never failing, never losing our way, never doing anything we're ashamed to remember later. Real strength lies in whether, after each one of those moments, we come back, whether we dare to look it in the eye, write it down, breathe, and take one more small step, the next honest step. In the next part, we'll talk more about that, why real strength isn't about never falling, but about the ability to always return. For now, as your eyes grow heavier and your breathing evens out, I just want to leave you with one very gentle line. You don't have to become someone else tonight. You only need to treat yourself a half step more kindly than you did yesterday. The rest, life will slowly answer. There's something that's very easy to misunderstand if we only look from the outside. People who seem steady, calm, deep, they can look as if they simply make fewer mistakes than we do. Less anger, less impulsiveness, fewer late-night memories that make them lie awake, sighing. Why on earth did I act like that? But if you pull up a chair and sit close, if you could read the pages of their journals that they've never shown anyone, if you listened to their stories in full, you'd see a different truth. They fall too. Many times, the difference is not in how often they stumble, but in their habit of returning. Marcus Aurelius, the man we often point to as the image of a philosopher king, didn't write meditations from the position of someone perfect. He wrote as someone constantly reminding himself, "Today I let anger lead. Today I chased praise again. Today I forgot the very things I say I believe in." If he were a man who was always right, he wouldn't need to write. The person who needs daily reminders is the one who knows how easy it is for him to slip. What makes him credible is exactly that. He doesn't deny the fact that he falls, but he also doesn't stay on the ground. Think back to a very ordinary day of your own. Maybe you woke up in the morning and promised yourself, "Today I won't lose my temper. Today I won't mindlessly scroll. Today I'll focus and work properly." Then, in the middle of the day, someone says something that hits a very sore spot. You snap back, or you don't snap out loud, but a storm explodes in your mind. By afternoon, you're tired. You pick up your phone, and you scroll mindlessly until your eyes blur at night, staring at the screen. You feel like you've achieved almost nothing, and you're exhausted, and the familiar line appears, "I give up. I really can't change." That feeling, that urge to just drop everything because you seem beyond saving, can sometimes be heavier than the initial failure itself. Stoicism doesn't deny that we fail. It just offers a very small reminder. Don't turn a single slip into a life sentence. Have you experienced this? Just because you overate at one dinner, you say, "Forget it. It's ruined anyway. Might as well keep going." Just because you skipped one workout, you say, "Well, that's the end of my streak." Just because you texted someone you swore you wouldn't contact again, you conclude, "I have zero discipline." A small scratch gets turned into the whole door is broken, when sometimes all that really needs to happen is, "Yeah, today I slipped. Tomorrow, start again from the spot I fell." Marcus also knew what it felt like to let shame hang over his head, but he didn't give it the privilege of being the final sentence. He wrote it down. He stated clearly, "Here is where I was wrong." No elaborate excuses. And right after that, he turned his eyes forward. Next time, choose differently. Not a self-pep talk, not a dramatic speech, just a small, clear direction. Shame, if we know how to use it, should only be a signal. This part isn't okay. After that, it needs to be put down to make room for the next action. If you cling forever to "I'm terrible," you won't have any energy left to take even a single step. Have you ever blamed yourself for texting in anger, speaking too harshly, judging someone too quickly, and then noticed that you kept repeating it? That loop, fall gives shame, gives self-insult, gives exhaustion, gives no change, gives no change, gives fall again, is what wears us out more than the hardship itself. Stoicism points us toward another loop. Fall gives notice, gives right, face it, gives small correction, gives return to the old standard. Neither loop is clean. Both have stains. The difference lies in whether you use the stain to thicken the line, "I'm useless," or to mark the spot that needs cleaning. Imagine each value you want to live by: patience, discipline, kindness, honesty. As a track, life doesn't run on a perfectly straight line. It bumps, hits potholes, bends around corners. Sometimes your wheels slip off the track. Slipping off doesn't mean the train is destroyed. It just means you're temporarily running on a side path. The important question is not, "Have I ever slipped?" Because the answer is always yes. It's, "Do I choose to guide myself back onto the track?" Each time you steer yourself back, whether it's after a few hours, days, or weeks, you're training a very precious muscle. the muscle of returning. In your journal, you can train this with very simple lines. Today I snapped at someone because of my own stress. Next time, before I speak, take one deep breath. Today I stayed up way too late again. Tomorrow night, turn the lights off 15 minutes earlier. Today I stalked that person again. From tomorrow, whenever my fingers want to tap on their profile, I'll open my notebook and write 3 lines first. Not to create a massive checklist, just to send a soft signal to yourself. I see it. I'm not pretending I don't, and I want to be different. Every time you manage even a tiny part of what you wrote, you're not just changing a habit. You're rebuilding your trust in yourself. So it turns out, I can come back. There are also failures much deeper than staying up late or scrolling too long. There are choices that every time you remember them, you just wish you could turn back time. A time you betrayed your own standards in love. A time you let someone get badly hurt when you know you could have acted differently. A time you stayed silent in front of something clearly unjust because you were afraid of losing your place. Those things maybe no one else knows as fully as you do, but they sit there in a very dark corner. Here, coming back doesn't mean fixing everything. Some things simply cannot be fixed. Coming back here means daring to look at it directly, taking responsibility, and from that point on, living differently. You cannot erase a sentence you already said, but you can let it become the reason that from now on, you are more careful with every word. You cannot go back and shield a person who was hurt because of your silence, but you can decide, next time, if I see this happen again, I will not stand on the sidelines. Atonement doesn't live in hating yourself every night. It lives in using that very pain as a compass for your choices. From here on, that is returning in the deepest sense. There's an image you can keep in mind whenever you feel like you're broken beyond repair. Someone learning to walk again after a crash. At first, their legs shake. Every step is scary. They stand up, walk a few steps, stumble again. Their knees hurt. If at that point they conclude, forget it, my legs are ruined, I'll just sit forever, then the rest of their life will be very small. But if, after resting a bit, they try standing again, hold on to a table, then take slower, more deliberate steps, their muscles will remember. Balance will return. And one day, they'll walk almost like before. Character is the same after a big fall. You won't walk the way you used to right away. You'll be scared. You'll hesitate. You'll doubt yourself. But if every time that happens, you choose to stand up one more time, write a few more lines, speak one more apology, keep one more small promise, your inner balance will slowly return. There's a truth that is both comforting and a bit funny. None of us has it all figured out. No one has arrived. Even the people you admire most, the authors, the creators, those who say very wise things, they're still practicing. They still have days when they slide. They still send messages they regret. They still have bad habits they have to wrestle with, so those habits don't drag them too far off track. The only thing they're more consistent with than most people is this habit. Every time they fall, they treat it as an invitation to return, not as a final verdict. Tonight, if you're lying here listening to these words with the feeling that you're too late, that you've messed up too many things, that you've lost your chance to become a better person, I want to sit beside you for a moment, very quietly, just to say one thing. There is no such thing as too late for coming back to the best part of who you are. There are consequences you'll have to live with. There are doors that won't reopen, but the way you treat the rest of your life, the way you see yourself, the way you treat other people from this moment onward, still holds so much space. Real strength is not a spotless record, it is the fact that you still choose to return, even when your file already has a few ink stains. In this final part, we'll come to an image that seems very small, but is actually the thread running through everything we've talked about. All the tiny, quiet, anonymous good things you do in a day, holding a door for someone, not adding one more cutting remark, listening until someone finishes their sentence, doing the right thing when no one is checking. Those small things, over time, feed your soul, and that's when you realize living a deep life is not one dramatic transformation, but a whole journey of falling, then standing up again, and taking very small, very ordinary, very quiet steps in the direction your heart knows is right for now. Before we move into the last section, you can close your eyes, take one deep breath, and gently ask yourself, where did I fall today? Tomorrow, am I willing to return from that exact spot? You don't need a firm answer, just by asking the question. A part of you has already started to come home. There's a kind of good person you don't see on the news, who doesn't stand on stages, who has no big change the world story to tell. If we joke a bit with names, I'd call them neutral good people who choose what's right in a quiet, unseen way, without waiting for anyone to notice. They're the person who holds the elevator door a few extra seconds for someone running toward it, the person who stops their bike to lend a hand to an elderly person waiting through a flooded street, the person who straightens a crooked chair in a cafe so the next person won't trip. The person who, when someone is being unfairly spoken about, gently steps in. Maybe it's not entirely like that. Let's hear their side too. No one applauds those acts. No one posts a story saying thank you. No one gives them a medal, but it's exactly those small, quiet things that quietly nourish the soul. Across this whole long video, we've talked about many things that sound big. People as your path, obstacles as the way, amor fati, loving your fate, journaling so you don't drown, loving without becoming a slave to your emotions, living in line with your values, finding meaning right where you are, legacy as the feeling you leave in people's hearts, the next honest step, small but true, and the strength of always returning after you fall. Asterisk, but if you fold all of that up, it fits inside one very small picture each day. What do you choose to do when no one knows? When you could add one more cutting sentence, you hold it back. When you could bend the rules a little to benefit yourself, you choose to do it properly. When you could turn away from someone going through something hard, you stay a few extra minutes just to listen until they finish. Those choices are so small that only you and the night know, but they are exactly what shape the kind of person that later, when someone mentions your name, they don't use a lot of adjectives. They just say, when I was around that person, I felt like I could be myself. You might ask, but is that really enough? In such a loud world, if I only do a few tiny good things, does it matter? The answer is, for the world, maybe no one is counting, but for your soul, it's an entire diet, just as your body is not nourished by rare feasts, but by simple daily meals. Your soul is not fed mainly by a few dazzling moments, but by countless small choices you repeat. Every time you don't lie, even when it's easy. Every time you say sorry, even though your ego protests. Every time you don't join in trash-talking someone for fun. Every time you do the right thing when no one is checking. You reinforce, inside you, a quiet sense. Right, this is the kind of person I am. Quiet, but this is me. Neutral good doesn't mean so nice that anyone can walk all over you. On the contrary, they have very clear boundaries. They don't let people continually step over their limits. Don't force themselves to smile when they want to cry. Don't cooperate with injustice just to keep the peace. But once those boundaries are in place, within that safe frame, they try to do what good they can, speak respectfully, do their work properly, keep their promises, not exploit anyone's kindness, not perfect, not neat every day, but leaning toward kindness whenever possible. Like a compass needle, it can shake, but in the end, it turns back to one direction. You can look back over the whole journey we've taken together tonight. People who irritate you, not obstacles, but training ground for patience, boundaries, wisdom, obstacles in your way, not only to make you stumble, but to give you a chance to grow stronger. Storms outside don't have to become storms inside if you practice the pause before reacting. Chapters of life you want to tear out can become useful when you dare to whisper, "Even this is part of my story." Writing is how you sit with yourself, pulling vague clouds into visible streams of water. Love is making room for someone in your heart while keeping a room for yourself. Be one is narrowing the gap between what you say you believe and what you actually do, not with slogans, but with small choices. Meaning doesn't wait for life to become epic. It lives in the way you pour a glass of water, answer a call, end a day. Legacy isn't in monuments, but in how safe people feel when they're near you. The next honest step is what you can do today, however small, that you know is right. And strength isn't about never falling, but about whether, after each fall, you're willing to return to the path you chose. All of that, folded together, becomes these tiny, very ordinary good things you can do on any day. You don't have to wait until you're ready. You don't have to wait until everything settles down. You just need tomorrow to choose one or two things to do a little differently. Tonight, before you sleep, you don't need to write out dozens of goals. You only need to ask yourself a few very soft questions today. Was there a moment when I went a little easier on someone? Today, was there a moment when I didn't betray myself, even in something tiny? If tomorrow I only manage one tiny good thing, what do I want it to be? It might be holding the door for someone. It might be calling someone you haven't spoken to in a long time. It might be choosing not to throw one more hurtful line when you're angry. It might be writing 3 lines to yourself instead of hiding in your screen for another hour. Those things won't change the world overnight, but they will change the where you are in this world, and that already is a lot. By now, your eyes are probably heavy, your breath slower, the room around you a little quieter. At the start of this video, we began with a very familiar feeling. Life is chaotic. People are complicated. Obstacles pile up. And sometimes you feel so small, you just want to disappear from everything for a while now. We're not promising that when you wake up tomorrow, all of that will vanish. The world will still be loud. People will still be confusing. Repetitive tasks will still be waiting. But maybe, inside, something has softened by half a step. You know you don't need one dramatic makeover. You just need to keep doing the next right thing. And every time you get lost, come back to it one more time. If, right now, your mind is still buzzing with a few small noises, a task undone, a message unanswered, a memory still open, you can temporarily hand them to tomorrow. Not to run away, but to tell yourself, tonight, I'm giving myself permission to do just one thing. Rest. Place your hand on your chest. Feel your heartbeat still going strong all these years. Even in the moments you felt like nothing. It doesn't ask whether you were successful today, whether anyone praised you. It just quietly works. keeping you here. You can whisper one tiny line. Thank you for still being here. Tomorrow, I'll try to be better just a little bit. Thank you for letting this voice stay with you all the way to the end. This is Lucid Dream, Sleep, and Science Stories. If on some night life feels tangled again, your heart is noisy again, you can come back. Lie down, close your eyes, and let another story sit beside you one more time. For now, every training ground, every lesson, every question can step aside for a while. The rest of the work, let sleep take care of it. You only need to breathe evenly, soften your shoulders, and allow yourself to drift slowly away from today's shore and gently float into a night just a little bit quieter than yesterday.